All they could do was flee in desperation. The knights chased them down and killed them. Horses the knights rode were standing in the fields eating the wheat. Momonga clicked his tongue. He went to change the view. This village held no value for him. If he could have gotten some information, there might have been a point to saving it, but as it was, no, he should ignore them. As he made this cold-hearted judgment, Momonga suddenly felt confused. There was a slaughter in progress, and all that came to mind was what Nazarick stood to gain. The emotions he would have taken for granted, pity, anger, uneasiness, were completely missing. He felt like he was watching animals on TV or insects in the dirt, playing out survival of the fittest. As an undead, was he already counting humans as a different species? Nah, it couldn't be. He hurried to justify his thoughts with an excuse. He wasn't some hero. He may be level 100, but as he said to Mare, normal people here might be that level too. I can't just go charging into a situation when I'm in a world where anything is possible. The knights may be killing the villagers in a one-sided way, but there could be a reason for it. It could be disease, crime, or a lesson. There are many possible reasons. If I step in as a third party to drive the knights away, I might make an enemy of the country they serve. Momonga put a hand to his head, to his skull. It wasn't that he had ceased to be human and transformed completely into an undead, immune to psychic effects. His hand slipped, and a different part of the village showed up on the screen. Two knights were breaking up a struggle between a villager and another knight. They forcibly dragged the villager away and made him stand up. One knight restrained his hands. Then, as Momonga watched, the other stabbed him with his sword. The blade went clear through the flesh and came out the other side. That was probably fatal, but the sword didn't stop there. The knight stabbed once, twice, 3 times, over and over, as if taking out his anger. Finally, he kicked the body away. It fell, splurting blood, to the ground. Momonga and the villager's eyes met, or perhaps he just thought they did. Nah, this has to be a coincidence. Unless there was anti-intelligence magic involved, there was no way the villager could know he was being observed. His mouth worked frantically, spilling a bloody froth. His eyes were already glazing over. It was impossible to tell where he was looking. Still, he clung to life and was able to get some words out. "Please, my daughters, what will you do?" Sebas asked, as if he'd been waiting for the right time. "There's only one answer. Ignore them. We've nothing to gain by saving them," Momonga answered calmly. "Understood." Momonga casually glanced over at Sebas. Behind him appeared a vision of his former guildmate. Right touch, but then Momonga remembered something Touch Me had once said. When someone's in trouble, it's only natural to help them. Back when Momonga had started playing Yggdrasil, there were people going around hunting grotesques like him. The quote was a memory from those times. He'd kept getting PK'd and was almost ready to quit the game when Touch Me had reached out to help him. If it weren't for that, Momonga wouldn't be here. He slowly exhaled and broke into a resigned smile. With that quote in mind, he couldn't very well not go and help them. "I'll repay the debt I owe you. I have to test out my combat abilities in this world at some point." Anyway, he talked to someone who wasn't there, then zoomed out to look at the entire village. He combed over it, searching for villagers who were still alive. Sebas, put Nazarick on the highest alert level. "I'm going ahead. Albedo is standing by in the next room. Tell her to fully arm herself and follow, but no Jinugagap. Also, prep reinforcements. If something happens and I become unable to retreat, send in a party with good stealth abilities or invisibility." Understood. "But if you need an escort, then I would. If you escort me, then who will relay orders? If knights are rampaging through that village, another group could appear near Nazarick while I'm gone. If that happens, I need you here." The scene in the mirror changed. He saw a young girl send a knight staggering with a punch. Then she took a younger girl, was it her little sister, by the hand and tried to escape. Momonga immediately opened his item box and took out the staff of Aints Ulgown. Meanwhile, the girl's back had been cut. There was no time to lose. The spell glided out of his mouth. Gate. Momonga traveled by way of the most reliable teleportation spell in Yggdrasil. It could cover any distance and had a failure rate of 0%. His view changed. Momonga felt a tiny bit of relief that there had not been any magic blocking his teleportation. If there had been, he wouldn't have been able to save the village, and someone might have gotten the jump on Nazarick. The scene before him was the one he'd been watching a moment before. The two scared girls. The older one probably was the elder sister. She had shoulder-length hair in a braid. Fear had drained the blood from her healthily tanned face. Tears brimmed in her eyes. The younger one had buried her face in the older girl's back. Her whole body was trembling. Momonga looked coolly at the knight standing before them. He must have been thrown off by Momonga teleporting in. The knight had forgotten he'd been swinging his sword and was just staring at him. Momonga had lived a non-violent life. And he felt this world was real, not a game. Despite that, confronting an opponent with a sword didn't scare him one bit. His calm made a cool-headed decision for him. He opened his empty hand, stretched it out and promptly cast a spell. Grasp Heart. Magic tiers went from 1 to 10. This was a 9th tier spell, one that caused instant death by crushing the enemy's heart. It was one of Momonga's specialties. He was strong in ghost magic, which often came with effects like Stay Death. He'd chosen this as his opening move because even if his opponent resisted it, there was stun as a secondary effect. In that case, he planned to take the two girls and jump through the still open gate. When the strength of your enemy is unknown, you need an evacuation strategy and a plan B ready. But in this case, the prep was unnecessary. At the same time, he felt something warm being squashed in Momonga's fist. The knight silently crumpled to the ground. Momonga looked down coldly at the lifeless body. He had a hunch it would be this way, and sure enough, he felt nothing upon killing a human. His mind was like the surface of a placid lake, no guilt, fear, or confusion. Why? So it seems I've quit being human in mind as well as in body. Momonga walked forward. As he passed the girls, who must have been frightened by the death of the knight, the elder sister made a hesitant noise. One look was enough to tell them he had come to save them, and yet they were panicked, as if he had done something insane. What did they expect? He wanted to know the answer, but he didn't have time for a question and answer session. He confirmed that the elder sister's shabby clothes were torn and her back was bleeding. He hid the two of them behind him and shot a penetrating glare at a new knight who had appeared next to a nearby house. The knight registered Momonga as well and took a step back, as if he was scared. So you're fine chasing little girls around, but I'm too much to handle. Momonga sneered in response to the knight's terror and set about selecting his next spell. For his first move, he had chosen a pretty advanced one. Grasp Heart was from the magic tree he specialized in, so he got the ghost magic boost and a boosted rate of Stay Death success as well. But there was no way to tell how powerful the knights really were like that. He should use something else on the next one, not Stay Death, as a chance to test not only how strong beings in this world are, but also how strong he himself was. Well, since you're here, I'm going to have you help me with my experiment. In comparison to how strong Momonga's ghost magic was, his basic attack magic was fairly weak. Metal armor was weak against electric magic, so in Yggdrasil, most players added electric resistance to their armor. This meant using electric magic would be a good way to see how much damage the knights could take. He wasn't going for the kill, so he didn't need to use a skill to boost the magic. Dragon lightning, white lightning appeared, writhing like a living thing, from his hand to his shoulder. A beat later it leaped off the end of his finger, pointed at the knight like an electric discharge from a cloud. It was impossible to dodge or guard against. The energy took the form of a dragon and lit the knight up glaringly white for just a split second. Ironically, it was beautiful. The flash dimmed, and the knight fell to the ground like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The strange odor of his charred flesh beneath his armor could be smelled faintly. Momonga had been prepping for his follow-up attack, and was astounded to see how fragile the knights were. How weak they die this easily. To Momonga, Dragon Lightning, a 5th-tier spell, was not very powerful. When he, as a level 100, went out to gain experience, he'd mainly been using spells in 8th tier and up. He barely used 5th-tier spells at all. Seeing that his opponents were so fragile, his worry disappeared. Of course, those two might have been particularly weak. Still, it was hard to feel nervous at this point. Nonetheless, he kept his option to teleport away open. It was possible that they specialized in attacking. In Yggdrasil, an attack that chopped a player's head off would just be counted as a critical hit and deal a lot of damage. But in the real world, it would be instantly fatal. Since he could no longer be nervous, Momonga decided to be cautious. It would be stupid to die from carelessness. First, he needed to test more of his powers. He used a skill create middle tier Undead Death Knight. This was one of his special abilities. He could create all sorts of undead mobs, but this one was his favorite tank. Its total level was 35, which was low. Its attack level was even lower, comparable to a level 25 mob. On the other hand, it had good defense, but still only about what a level 40 mob would have. In other words, in terms of levels, this monster was not very useful to Momonga. However, the Death Knight had two handy special abilities. One was that it would pull all enemy attacks. The second was that it could withstand any attack once, leaving it with only one hit point remaining. Momonga had been able to make good use of it as a shield for those reasons, and that was why he was creating one now. When the Create Undead skill was used in Yggdrasil, the monster would instantly shimmer out of thin air near the player, but it seemed to work differently in this world. A black fog oozed out of the air and covered the knight whose heart had been crushed. It puffed up, but then began to melt into the corpse. Then he abruptly stood up with jerky, inhuman movements. Momonga heard the two girls shriek, but he didn't have time to care about that. He was just as surprised as they were. A black liquid glugged noisily out of the slit in the knight's helmet. It must have been coming out of his mouth. The viscous, dark fluid flowed to cover his entire body without missing a spot. It was like seeing someone get preyed on by a slime. Once the darkness had enveloped him completely, his shape began to warp and change. After several seconds, the darkness drained away, and what was standing there could definitely be called the vengeful spirit of a dead knight. He'd grown to a height of around 7.5 feet, and his body had gotten insanely thick. It made more sense to call him a beast than a person. In his left hand, he held a huge tower shield that covered 3/4 of his body, and in his right, a flamberge. Normally this blade was more than 4 feet long. It was normally wielded with both hands, but this giant could easily hold it in one. A horrifying aura of reddish-black twisted around the waved blade. It undulated like the beating of a heart. His huge body was covered in full plate armor. The armor was made of black metal, with a pattern of crimson arteries going through it here and there. It was quite the embodiment of violence. Sharp spikes jutted out in various places. His helmet had horns like a demon. It had an open face that left his rotting features visible. In his vacant orbits, his hatred for living things and anticipation of slaughter burned red. He stood in his ratty raven black mantle awaiting orders. His posture was appropriately imposing. Momonga could feel the mental connection to the summoned monster. It was just like he had felt with the primal fire elemental and the moon wolves. He used it to give an order. Kill the knights. He pointed at the knight he'd killed with dragon lightning who are attacking this village. Yarug, the knight howled. It was a scream that would make anyone's skin crawl. The air vibrated with his bloodlust. He ran off, swift as the wind, and made a beeline like a hunting dog on the scent of its prey. It seemed his perception ability hate was working. Watching his Death Knight get smaller and smaller in the distance, Momonga was vividly aware of a difference between this world and Yggdrasil, the difference of freedom. A Death Knight was supposed to stand by near its summoner, Momonga, and intercept enemies. Wasn't supposed to take orders and act on its own. That difference could prove fatal in a world containing so many unknowns. Momonga clawed at his face in frustration. He's gone. What's the point of a shield who leaves the one he's supposed to protect? He asked. Sure, he was the one who gave the order, but he mumbled. He could make more Death Knights, but since he didn't know the strength of his enemies or what the situation was, he felt he should save his casts of spells that were limited. But Momonga was a rear guard magic user. He had no one to go out front and tank for him. He felt naked. I guess I should make one more, he was thinking. Someone came through the still open gate just as it was beginning to expire and fade away. The figure was covered head to toe in demonic black armor. Not a single patch of skin showed among the thorny raven black plates. It was equipped with a raven black kite shield. In its hands, wearing gauntlets with spikes like claws, it casually held a bardage. The bardage gave off a faint, sickly green glow. A mantle the color of fresh blood was draped over its shoulders. Its surcoat was also blood-red. My apologies. Getting ready took some time. From beneath the horn-close helmet came the charming voice of Albedo. She had learned all the classes that had good defensive abilities. She also learned classes that seemed appropriate for an evil knight to know, like Dark Knight. For that reason, she had the best defense of all the level 100 warrior-type NPCs, Sebas, Cocytus, and herself in Nazareth. In other words, she was the best tank they had. Oh, that's fine. Actually, your timing is perfect. Thank you. Then how will you dispose of these lower life forms that are still alive? Would you rather I dirty my hands in your place? What did you hear from Sebas? Albedo said nothing. He didn't tell you, we're saving this village. Our enemies at the moment are the ones in the armor, like that guy lying over there. Albedo indicated her understanding, and Momonga looked elsewhere. Let's see. The two girls shrank and tried to hide themselves under Momonga's unreserved gaze. Maybe seeing the Death Knight is what was making them shake so hard. Or was it the howl, or what Albedo had said? Maybe all of it. Momonga thought he would first try to show them he wasn't an enemy. Healing the elder sister's wounds seemed like a fine way to do that, so he reached toward her, but the girls didn't see it the way he did. A wet patch appeared between the elder sister's legs. And then the younger sister, S. The smell of ammonia drifted into the vicinity. Waves of fatigue Momonga wasn't even supposed to experience them surged over him. He didn't know what to do. It seemed like asking Albedo for help would be a bad idea, so he decided to continue as he had been. You look injured. As an adult, Momonga had been trained to look past all manner of things. Pretending not to notice they'd wet themselves, he opened his item box and took out a bag. An infinity haversack, unlike its name, was limited to around £1,000. The items inside could be given menu shortcuts, so it was a Yggdrasil basic for players to use a bag like this for things they wanted to use often. In one of his many infinity haversacks, Momonga finally found a red potion. It was a minor red potion. It healed 50 HP in Yggdrasil. Every player ended up using them early on in the game. But to Momonga, this item was useless. This type of potion used Justice energy to heal, but for an undead like Momonga, Justice had the opposite effect. It worked as a poison. However, not all his guildmates were undead. That was why he hadn't thrown them away. Drink this. He casually thrust it toward her. The older girl grimaced in horror. I'll drink it. Just please don't make my sister sis. The younger girl tried to stop her, looking like she was about to cry. Momonga racked his brains. Why the tender family drama when all I did was save them and then offer a potion out of the kindness of my heart? Seriously, what the heck? They don't trust me at all. I was going to ignore them, but instead I saved their lives. It wouldn't be weird at all if the three of us were tearfully hugging right now. Or rather, that's what it would look like in a movie or a manga. But this is the complete opposite. What is the problem? Do you have to be good looking to get that kind of ending? As various questions came up in Momonga's fleshless, skinless head, he heard a gentle voice. He tried to give you lower life forms a potion out of kindness, and you refused. You deserve to die 10,000 deaths. Albedo instinctively raised her bardage. It was clear she was determined to promptly chop off both of their heads. Considering how he was being treated after risking danger to save them, Momonga understood how she felt. But he couldn't allow her to go through with it, or the whole point of coming would be lost. Wait, don't be too hasty. There's an order to everything. Lower your weapon. Understood. I obey your word, she replied in a velvet tone, and returned her bardage to its former position. Still, the thick air of violence coming off Albedo was more than enough to scare the two girls. Their teeth were chattering. Even Momonga could feel it in the pit of his stomach. Anyway, we can't get out of here soon enough. There's no telling how bad things will get if we stay. Momonga offered the potion again. This isn't dangerous, it's medicine that will heal you. Hurry and drink it. His tone contained a bit of kindness, even as he tried to compel her. He implied she'd die if she didn't. She reacted by opening her eyes wide. She grabbed the potion and downed it in one go. Then came surprise. No way. She touched her back. She twisted around and whacked herself a few times, as if she couldn't believe it. The pain is gone, right? Why, yes, she nodded, looking utterly astounded. So a minor healing potion will do for a wound like that. That was fine, but Momonga had another question. There was no avoiding it. Everything depended on her answer. Do you two know what magic is? Why, yes. There's an apothecary who sometimes comes to our village, my friend. He can use magic, I see. That makes things much easier to explain. I'm a caster. He casts some spells. Anti-life cocoon. Wall of protection from arrows. A glowing dome appeared in a 10-foot radius around the girls. There weren't any other visible effects, but changes could be felt in the air. Normally, he would perfect the setup with an anti-magic spell, but he didn't know what kind of magic this world had, so he just left it as it was. They'd just have to consider themselves unlucky if another caster showed up. I used a spell that puts up a barrier. It won't let any living things through. I also used a spell that weakens projectile attacks. If you stay there, you should be pretty safe. And just in case, I'll give you these too." After giving a simple explanation of the magic he had cast, he took out two shabby-looking horns and tossed them over. Apparently the wall of protection from arrows didn't register them as something to be stopped, so they fell near the girls. These are items called Goblin General's horns. If you blow them, an army of goblins' little monsters will appear and obey your orders.